Okay, unfortunately Houdini crashed, so I have lost all my beautiful progress pictures, but say la vie. So anyway, the last thing, like I said, was now we have an all CG scene here, CG smoke, CG background. Sometimes you don't have, we wanted to just have this smoke, let's say, live in a actual scene that was shot on film. So, we wouldn't have this background. We would just have footage back here. What you would do in that case is you would still have to model geometry that represented your scene, and, let's say your ground, for example, because we still need to receive shadows and things onto it in order to, make it feel like this actually lives in the live action scene. So it's pretty simple. What you can do is those image planes we talked about earlier. So on the mantra background one like this, we can create another image plane that will store shadows. Basically, just create a new image plane and say a direct shadow matte. The direct shadow matte will say that for every object that's actually being rendered, the ground, just also store, like when it's sending out shadow rays, it knows that it's doing that, and so it's just saying write the results of that into this other image plane. So it'll still do it in terms of the smoke here. So to show you what that looks like, we render the background manager thing here and let that get started. It'll probably be pretty grainy in our low quality settings here, but you can always pump up the settings and stuff. So if we look at direct shadow, oh, that's not it. There we go. This is basically the opposite. Everywhere that it's lighter is where it will need to be made darker. So you can see, looking at it, that's where the shadow is. You can also see that this is all fairly dark back here. It's all kind of in shadow. And that's what this is showing us. So you would take this image, a less grainy one, of course, but you would use this image to use in your compositing, where you have your live action footage, and you would use this to subtract this much color out of your live action footage, or you would invert this to turn this back into dark, and you'd multiply this by your live action footage to again create shadows, good enough shadows. Relies on you modeling again what's going on in your live action footage, but we're not doing that in this lesson. But I think it's a common enough thing you might want to know how to do that yes, it's just another image plane we can store in our output images, and you can extract this direct shadow in Nuke or in Houdini, as I'll show you in the next chapter, and that's how you would do it. Along those lines, we don't need the indirect lighting here, because the indirect lighting was only for the volumes. They're the only ones. We increased the volume limit up, so only that was getting indirect lighting anyway. So we don't even have to worry about that. So you just turn that off. Make your file size smaller. Yeah, everything else is fine. Cool. So it's also worth noting, it's a similar thing here. The individual lights get their own contributions here. Obviously there's not much to see for the geometry light. I guess there is a little bit if you really heighten it, but okay. So that's enough. Yeah, so that should be it. Before you send off, a huge render, I would say spend the 15 minutes or 20 minutes or hopefully not an hour on doing one frame of the smoke here, like in the regular, not preview thing. So let's actually go to HQ mode. Let's actually render one frame of the smoke into MPlay and just look at it. Because again, this is what will be rendered. This will probably take some time to do, but we might as well invest one frame's worth of time into seeing what it's going to look like when it's over. I want to make sure that the detail is there, that something crazy isn't happening. Don't worry about tweaking like how bright the light is or anything. That's exactly what we're going to do in the compositing. But we can see we do have so much detail in here already, which is nice. We don't really need to resim our sim at a higher setting or anything. So I'm sure this will turn out fine. But just for us as a sanity check, run one frame, and then once we're confident that it's looking fine, and that the render settings are good, then we'll send them all out. So I'll let that finish, and we'll reconvene, and then we'll go away again. And there you go. Took 7 minutes on my computer for probably one of the longer frames towards the end there. And yeah, looks really cool. Lots of nice detail. Everything seems good. No graininess in the alpha. You know, a little bit of graininess over here still. But, I mean, you know, that's pretty good. Whatever. That's a nice image planes to look at if I could ever get it to open. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, sweet. So there it is, ready to go. Close that. If you want to test the other one, you can. The background one. I mean, the background one is just the friggin', you know, wall. So it should be fine. But I guess, let's see. In any case, so we're going to render these out now. All those image planes are stored in the EXRs. So, oh, see, look at that. Good thing we tested it. So, running this, when we duplicated our mantra nodes here, that didn't duplicate the overrides. So, we had all these cool overrides for the high quality render on the one node, but they're not on the other node. So, there you go. Very important that we do these tests. So, now that we're doing it, turn off the override camera resolution, come back over to the thing over here. I think we just need to, the noise level should be 0.01, the stochastic should be 8, and I don't think we really changed anything else. Oh yeah, well, there was the limits, but we don't need a limit for the ground. I'll just include this for fun. So one more test on the background. See, look at that. Sanity checks. That would have been annoying. Find out that I had 120 frames of a half resolution noisy ground. Not that they take that long to render anyway, but still. So there, obviously this is better now. And there you go. And there's our direct shadow that we're not going to use. Still kind of grainy actually on the direct shadow. Well, whatever. So good, done with the rendering and simulation, all that stuff. The last thing is to actually render these out now and then composite them together, and that's actually pretty fun and easy. So I clicked on the purple button here on the merge, do node by node on here, render, and that's it. It'll take a while. See you soon. All right, so here's our render. Looking pretty cool. Lots of detail, everything's working. We can also look at the individual layers. I already preloaded these images, meaning I played through the mplay. Yours may not play quite as fast the first time, but that's okay. Yeah, direct light, indirect light, all that stuff we talked about. The geom light, the geom light direct is pretty cool. Yeah, that's rad. We can see all the shadows, like beams of shadows almost. You can see the angular shadows kind of in here. Pretty rad, you know. So we'll actually end up compositing these elements together, making changes to these, and we'll end up with something like this, but with whatever changes we make. We also have this super cool element, which is just, you know, this. But you get the idea there. That's cool too. Pretty sweet. Yeah. So let's actually composite these elements together.